Good evening. My name is Victor Castro, and this is Mainline Tonight. Welcome to tonight's show. We're going to feature a special guest Mainline tonight. We have this evening Nicholas Tursi. Nicholas Tursi is pursuing his career as a professional pilot. As such, he's achieved a number of checking events, primarily completing his instructional training and certification as a multi-engine instructor. It goes without saying that today is a very eventful, super eventful day. We just had a changing of the guard from a government perspective. And so on this momentous day, I just want to add a couple of notes here. We are going to be doing a follow-on session after this one at 7 o'clock this evening. And it's going to feature myself and Melissa. We're just going to go through some of the events of the day, just talking about the events that have transpired over the past 24 hours, over the past and a half or so. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started with Nicholas Tursi. I'm going to go ahead and connect him on board. Through acquaintance of mine. And here we have him. We have Nick Tursi. Mr. Nick, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Look, your connection looks fantastic.
Good.
You look.
Looks like we got some good lighting here. It's working out.
Yeah, fantastically. It's working out fantastically. So let's talk about your journey. We're here, for those of you who joined us last, I believe it was Sunday, right? Yeah. When we had our previous guest on board, Russell Swan, who walked us through his journey as a student pilot. You went through that, plus a few other check rides. So let's get right into it. Tell us about your journey as a multi-engine instructor. How did you get there?
Well, so I got out of the Army in 2018, and I kind of looked at a couple different careers. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. I was looking at some medical things. I was looking back into retail and back into sales. And, one night I got very lucky. I was out to dinner with a very good mentor of mine, a man named Mr. Victor Castro. And he looked at me and he asked me, have you ever been interested in flying? And I mean, I'll be honest, when I grew up, I had airplane wallpaper in my bedroom. I had plastic model planes my father and I had made of the P-51 and the B-17 Flying Fortress. I loved all these things. And for some reason, I had talked myself out of it when I was younger, thinking, oh, well, that's this unobtainable thing. And when it was brought up, I just, for some reason, sort of like Russell said, it seemed like this just unobtainable concept that was just so far out there. And I remember stopping and just looking at you with kind of a puzzled look going, I can do that? And you just responded with, yeah, it's what I do. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I can do that, can I? And I put a plan together. It took me a couple weeks to kind of research all the different things and put the plan together and figure out how all the pieces worked. So I started out by going through and visiting a lot of local flight schools and just asking them questions, asking them what type of planes that they fly, how many instructors they have, trying to meet some of the instructors. Obviously, you're going to spend a lot of time sitting shoulder to shoulder with this person. If you're only working on your private, you're still going to spend anywhere from 30 to 60 hours sitting next to this person. It better be someone that you like. And
Yeah, sure.
So fortunately, I started out at Brandywine Aviation, Brandywine Airport, right in Westchester, and I met this man named Matt Reykjavik. He was a recently retired Marine Corps C-130 pilot. He had 20 years. He was a great guy. We spent the entire time making fun of each other in the plane because I was Army and he was Marine Corps, and that's just what we do. And it was great.
It sounds like when we talk.
Yeah,
I think
it's very familiar, right? I think that's why I felt so at home. So it was this great feeling, and it was this great communication off the bat. Things went really well. And I went from there. I moved on to other airports. I got very lucky. I got associated with a group called RTAG. They're the Veteran to Aviation Charity. It's a group on Facebook. They're very big on finding veterans ways to afford flight training and I got in with them early, and they really helped kind of guide me along the path of what I would need to do, how I would need to get there.
Yep.
So I ended up enrolling in a aviation degree. I go to Liberty University. I'm flying out of their flight affiliate in Allentown. Oddly enough, it's actually Fly Gateway, the same company that trains Russell. And I've been able to work up through my instrument rating, which allows me to fly through the clouds, then into my commercial rating, which allows you to, in some ways, make money. It's very limited what you can do with a fresh commercial. You can tow some banners, you can fly some skydivers, and then I worked into the following steps. I did my CFI, so I'm a certified flight instructor. I worked on my instrument instructor rating, so I can now teach other people how to fly through these low visibility situations when it's raining and the clouds are low. I worked on my multi-engine commercial, and then just finally a few weeks ago, I got my multi-engine instructor. So anything up to essentially a jet, I can teach you how to fly.
Excellent. And in contrast, we went through some of the additional items that Russell carried, and he had like 6 or 7 books, and he didn't show his flight bag, but I'm going to bring you down memory lane. When you started off as a fresh pilot, how big was your flight bag?
My flight bag was a backpack when I first started. It was one of those things like where in high school, when you're a freshman, you have a backpack that's like breaking your back. It weighs like 500 pounds. You have all these notebooks and all these things in it. And you're really carrying around, honestly, 3 times more than what you need. And yet half the stuff isn't what you actually need in the first place anyway. So my first flight bag was, it was a headset that was actually a Bose QC25, just noise canceling headset with a little attachment. It's great. I still use it as backup today. I love it. It was a whole bunch of all the paper charts, all the planning materials, the calculators, all the different data sets that I need to know, flashcards for everything you could think of. I'm really big on carrying a pen and note cards, because anytime I'm doing a cross country, I just start writing things down on note cards, and I get to a point and I turn, and I'm like, okay, I turn here, throw that over my shoulder. Next note card, I'm gonna fly this direction. Okay, I get there, throw that over my shoulder. Next note card. I was extremely organized, and yet I slowly came to realize I had no idea what I was doing. And now I've kind of pared that down pretty drastically to just a headset and an iPad, oddly.
That's eventually what it turns into. When I was flight instructing many moons ago, I used to carry around my headset, my book. I had a little notebook. I would take all my notes for each of the students, because you have to keep track of all that, all the endorsements, all that kind of stuff. I had a test standards and a piece of paper just to write some things down, and beef jerky and water.
See, I like the important things. You always got snacks. You got Skittles with you, right?
Exactly. And I used to do, I don't know if you do this with your students, but there are some things that you leave your students with that it's great to come back and hear them say, I could hear your voice. So do you have any stories like that based on some of the people that you've worked with so far?
So there's a lot of right rudder. I get told I say that a lot. Obviously, for whatever reason, it is always the thing you will hear your CFI yelling at you the entire time you're flying. Right rudder, more right rudder, more right rudder. We can never seem to get enough right rudder no matter what we do. It's kind of like, sitting there going, more throttle, more throttle. So recently I had a student in the pattern who, I guess he just finally had that click aha moment of how to fly the pattern. And I'd had him working through some chair flying, so he was just sitting at home and he was imagining himself on different pieces. And we had recently gone out to the practice area, and we'd flown the practice area a few times, doing a very methodical approach to steps.
So just interrupt you real quick here, because some of the people don't know what a practice area is. So they have no idea what it's like when they take a flying lesson. So
think of a practice area almost like the parking lot that your parents took you to when you were learning how to drive. We have this section of air where all of our local controllers are going to keep all the traffic away from us, and we can sit there and we can go into a hard climb, and we can go into a hard descent, and we can start spinning around in circles, and we're not going to get in anybody's way, so it's not dangerous, and we're not worried about conflicting with anyone or potentially injuring ourselves or anyone else.
Great explanation of the practice area.
I find that's normally the easiest way, is relate everything back to cars, and people can kind of think about it a little bit. So we go out to the practice area, and we kind of had worked through these concepts of what we were doing on each stage and getting him kind of comfortable with the feel of each thing. And we came back into the pattern, and he flawlessly executed. We still didn't get that last 50 feet down. We still need to do a couple of low passes and work in the final pieces. But I was able to sit there and really not say anything because I had said so much before. He goes, I could hear you telling me, we slow down to this, we do this. We pitch up and we do this and we do this. Okay, we make a radio call, we turn, we do this, we do this. And he said, you know, from being out there for an hour, hour and a half of just talking through this step, this step, this step, this step, reset, this step, this step, this step, this step, reset. He said, you know, I could sit there and I could hear you in my head telling me, okay, we need to add flaps. We need to slow down. Why are we going so fast? Why are we so high? We need to do this. We need to do this.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And I'm not sure if you've soloed anyone yet, but it is a pretty amazing feeling when you see that person and you say to them, so here's what happens during a solo for the folks who've not taken a flying lesson. We take each student through about anywhere from 10 to 15 hours, 17 hours perhaps on the high side. And we take them through the lessons. We teach them how to fly straight and level, climbs, descents, turns. Then we take them in the traffic pattern, which is around the airport, and we practice takeoffs and landings. Like from day one, you practice takeoffs, right?
True.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then at some point, 10, 12, 15 hours into it, we look at the student and we say, all right, take it up in the pattern, fly around the airport. We fly what's called a box pattern, a rectangular pattern. And we basically say 3 takeoffs and landings to a full stop, taxi back and start again. And the look on their face when you leave the cockpit, it's like, please, please don't leave me. And then when they come back, when they're all done with their 3 takeoffs and landings, they have a smile that looks like a Cheshire cat. and you can't even fit their head out of the cockpit.
Oh,
it's pretty amazing.
It's funny, actually, my favorite part of that whole thing is at the end, we do what's called cutting the tail feathers. So we have them wear a shirt, and we normally warn them ahead of time, hey, wear a shirt that you don't really care about. And we come in and we'll cut the back of the shirt off, like clipping the tail feathers of the baby bird. We write on first solo and something to take home and hang up. And, you know, it's this nice feeling of accomplishment for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really amazing. So let's talk about where you are today and what does the landscape look like for you in the near future and further out, like 3 years?
Okay. So right now, obviously, I'm a flight instructor. I'm working, you know, essentially as many days a week as I can. The weather is always a big thing that obviously interrupts a lot of general aviation. You know, we're not a large jet. We can't just blast through clouds. We have to worry about collecting ice on ourselves and, you know, things like that. Obviously, if we're going to be, you know, turning and we're going to be doing things like that, we kind of have to be able to see what we're doing outside so we can keep our orientation. So right now, I'm instructing and I'm trying to pass on that knowledge that I built and that, you know, the mentor vibe that I've gotten from a lot of people throughout my career so far, trying to pass that on to some students and get them sort of into aviation. You know, it's amazing how often I run into someone just outside of aviation and say, oh yeah, you know, I always kind of thought about doing that, but isn't it really hard or expensive? And I'm like, honestly, like I was in the Army for 12 years. I'm not the brightest guy. If I can do it, I can probably get you to do it. Don't worry, we can make this work.
I would beg to differ with you on that, Nick. So just for the audience, my name is Victor Couch. This is Mainline Tonight. We have Nick Tursi here talking about his journey as a certified flight instructor. There are 3 basic levels of what we call land-based aircraft certification. Certified flight instructor instrument, and a multi-engine instructor. And that's for an aircraft land. We can do it for seaplanes and sailplanes and helicopters and all that other stuff. But we're just talking about the fixed wing stuff. Nick, you talked about your Army, your time in the Army, 12 years. And I think both of us know that in terms of dealing with stress, problem solving, all that kind of stuff, there are some things that transfer over. Can you give any examples of things that produced a high amount of stress, and then you found yourself later on going, wow, oh wow, that could have happened, or this could have happened?
So it's funny you say that. You know, so much of that military mindset is based off of taking a stressful situation and breaking it down into more manageable pieces. What can I do right now to make this one situation 10% better? Okay, let's execute it. Move on. Okay, we've gotten 10% better. Now what can I do to make it 10% better? And it's that mindset of, okay, you know, this is bad. We have flown into ice and we're accumulating ice on an aircraft that can't handle it, or the clouds are coming down on us, or we're coming into land and we're too low or we're too fast, or for some reason we put a bad control input in and now the plane's doing something we don't want to do.
Yeah.
That is very much something that is fostered a lot in aviation. There's a lot of problems on because there's always something that can go wrong. You're driving your car along on the highway and you blow a tire out. Okay, just pull off to the side of the road and you're fine. Unfortunately, our version of pulling off to the side of the road normally results in hitting something that we don't really want to hit and landing somewhere we probably don't really want to be. So a lot of that mentality of how are we going to approach a situation that is not really advantageous. That's a big thing that we focus a lot on, especially in private pilot instruction. Of
Yeah.
all the time you're in the plane, at probably 2/3 of the flights, I'm going to at some point ask, if we lost an engine right now, where are we going? And it's have to be consciously thinking about at all times.
Yeah, and very few people think about that when they get in their car and go drive to get groceries. Like, what would I do if this happened? What would I do if this happened? What would I do? And it's not a worry thing. It's not a stress. We just think through where we are. There's a thing I do with my students, and I see that Russ is watching the show, and I say, project yourself into space. In other words, put your brain where you want the airplane to be ahead of time so you can anticipate what you think is going to happen, which seems pretty improbable that you can think of all the variables, but ultimately good pilots do.
Yep.
Right? So, so projecting yourself forward, where do you see yourself 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line?
Well, so I'd like to keep instructing for a year and a half to 2 years. Hopefully by that time, obviously, COVID has done a lot of damage to our industry right now. It's really reduced a lot of things, which isn't really an unheard of thing. Like if you think back in 2001, obviously nobody was flying in planes. Things dropped off and they rebounded. In 2008, big financial crisis, everything dropped off and rebounded. This is where you were at those times.
Yeah.
So this is not really an unheard of thing, and this honestly really is a good time to be in the position that I am in, or if you decide that you want to pursue this as a commercial interest. This is a good time to be in the position that Russ is in. If he decided he wants for some reason leave law and go over and do this, he's actually in a good position. It'll take you a couple of years to build up the time, so that's really what I'm doing now. And my goal is that in 3 years I will have enough time to qualify for what's called an ATP, an airline transport pilot certification. That's what you currently use flying for an actual airline.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, that's another rating, another license that a pilot can achieve. It's kind of like getting your PhD in flying. Typically, it's 8 to 10 years for people to get that. Nick, one of the reasons I want to bring Nick on board is he's been on an accelerated path. You went from your private to your instrument to your commercial license to your multi-engine license to your CFI, CFII, MEI, and how much time?
So I started around September of 2018. It took me a couple months to get through my private. Unfortunately, my instrument got very dragged out. I was at that time at a location that didn't have enough instructors in plane, so it got very dragged on that. But the whole thing, if you count me all the way through my multi-engine instructor, it was September of 2018 until the end of December of 2020. So a little bit over 2 years to get through everything.
So for the folks who are interested in doing this, that is exceptional. Just gonna leave that right there. It's not impossible, but it shows what happens when you're very focused at what you do. Now, this is a passion thing for you. I remember helping you move out of your dad's house one time, and we saw those airplanes that were in the garage or in the basement somewhere, and you had some various things around, and that was what actually started the dialogue. I know you didn't know that I paid attention to that, but I paid attention.
I see you.
So that was one of the reasons why we started the conversation about making the career change, or not the career change, but augmenting your career choices. So with all that said, what are some of the pieces of advice that you could give to somebody who's interested in pursuing this, not specifically for flying, but maybe find some parallels in other parts of life? Because one of the things that's very important here is that you followed your passion and you were very focused and very disciplined in how you did it.
So the first thing is don't ever think that you should. So the phrase we use in the Army is self-selection. Don't self-select yourself out of something. I when I was younger, I really wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I had heard, they don't want anybody who's over 5'10". Well, I'm 6'1". I'm too tall because I assumed I was too tall to fit into the cockpit. That's obviously going to be very regulated in size. You have to have a college
Yep.
degree. You have to go to, the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, whatever. And I talked myself out of it. Don't self-select. Don't be the person who says, I can't do this. Make them tell you that you can't do this. If you want to go do something, put the effort into it. You don't know if you can or can't do it until you go and try and do it. Let them tell you that you're not able to. If it's aviation, then don't say, hey, I can't be a pilot. Trust me, there's in some way we can get you here. There are very few things that are actually 100% limiting that will prevent you from ever getting into a cockpit. Whether you want to do it on a private scale or on a commercial scale, you can get there. It's just, what is it going to take to get you there, and what are you willing to go through to get there? And at my school, we have students who are everywhere from 16 years old up to, we have one who's well into his 40s. This is not something that is something that you can't do. It's not something that's ever too late to do. So many people, you can look around for examples all the time. So many people have changed careers late in their life. I didn't even begin in aviation until I was in my 30s. Yes, there's a mandatory retirement at age 65. Does that kind of scare me a little bit? Yes, I'm a little bit behind the curve relative to other people. But you know what? It's something that I enjoy. And if it's something you enjoy, then find a way to do it.
Yeah.
You might not ever be the guy at the pinnacle, but you know what? You can be chasing him the entire time. So get out there and chase.
Yeah. You don't want to be the shoulda, woulda, coulda person.
Exactly.
And that's the one thing about the aviation community. That's why I keep coming back to it. There is that passion, and there's, I call it the eagle eye. When you see people's intensity in their eyes, and I know you've seen it being in the Army. I've certainly seen it, and there's different views in people's eyes. I mean, there have been some people who've been through some stuff, but in terms of my piloting, somebody said to me one time, and it was actually my parents, that I looked different. And it was, there was an intensity. They finally were able to narrow it down to an intensity in the eyes. Because you look at things differently. You actually are breaking things down into constituent components and figuring out the logical order and seeing how those things are going to get you to the end result that you want to have.
Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where when you find that thing that you're passionate about, and it doesn't matter what it could be. Look, the thing that you're passionate about could be cooking. I see someone just commented I know is very into cooking. It could be you really like doing glass blowing. It could be aviation. It could be any number of things. Find that thing, and if you can find a way to make it a career, even if it starts out as a hobby. A lot of people are worried about, oh, it's something that I really enjoy. I don't want to turn it into a career because then I might lose my passion for it. Okay, you use it as something that will drive you forward, even if it's not driving you forward on that thing. Maybe maybe it's glass blowing. Maybe you're really into glass blowing. Do it as a hobby and something you can do, not necessarily as a job, but as a pastime.
Yes.
Having that passion in your life is just going to make you feel that much more fulfilled and that much more driven in other aspects. I have this thing that I know I'm good at. Okay, cool. I can do something. I can be productive and good at something. That feeling of success is, for most people, a really important thing. And it's a very mental thing. We have to feel like we're good at something. Find that thing that you like, even if you're not the best at it. If you get enjoyment out of it, that's good enough. Drive forward in it and always strive to be a little bit better. I've gone through all these ratings. I'm honestly already working on my next one. I'm working on what's called your AGI, your Advanced Ground Instructor Certification. I'm not doing it because I need it. I have no need for this instruction. There's something called a Gold Seal Instructor. It requires all these things that I have to do, and I'm honestly, I know I'm probably not going to ever do half of them because it's different positions you have to hold and things like that. But I'm using the AGI as a way to study and to get better at this thing that I'm passionate about, to get better at this thing that I love. I will never say I'm the smartest or the most well-informed flight instructor. I work with instructors who have the entire regulation book memorized cover to cover. They can tell you how many periods are in each individual regulation. I am not a guy, so I'm always trying to find that way to study and to move forward and to be a little bit better. Whatever that thing is that you have passion about in your life, find that way to just keep on improving on it. Keep on driving yourself forward, and don't settle for status quo. Don't settle for, oh, well, like I'm kind of moving along and I like it. It's okay. If you enjoy it, then strive for it. Strive to be better at it. Strive to get more of it, to do more of it.
Isn't it amazing? So we fly what we call cardinal altitude. So based on the direction you're flying, you'll fly a certain altitude. Now, we're used to flying in commercial airliners, and the automation will hold that altitude within 20 feet, 10 feet. Even with turbulence, it holds at about 20 feet. If it's heavy turbulence, about 50 feet. And that's what we strive for when we're up there in the cockpit. Russ described his airplane as feeling everything, all the noise, all the bumps, everything. And guess what? We still try to get to hold your altitude when you first start off in 50 feet. And then as you get further along in your career, you say, hold it to 20 feet. That's the sign of your gold star instructor.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because you talk to so many people, and every instructor you talk to, every person who's been in aviation, all the people who are very into the safety aspects of it, they'll always tell you there's no such thing as a perfect flight, but we're always striving for that perfect flight. We're always striving for that. Could I have held my altitude, a little bit better? Could I have held my heading a little bit better? And it's that mentality of, I always want to be better today than I was yesterday. I always want to strive to continue growth in whatever this is every time that I go out and try it.
Well, on that note, Nick, I'm going to leave that as the lesson for everybody listening this evening. I'd like to thank you for being here on Mainline tonight. Certainly a pleasure having you here. I know we have other things we're connected through, and your message is a really great message, and you've led a really good, as a really good example. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you here on the show this evening. So with that, good luck with the flying career. I'll see you probably next week or two.
Yeah. Victor, thank you very much for having me, buddy.
All right. So there you have it. We have Nick Tursi. So flygateway.com is the airport. Is up in Allentown. There's also a facility over in Wingsfield, just off the turnpike. As I said earlier at the top of the show, we are going to have another show at 8:00 p.m., kind of highlighting some of the events that have occurred here in the past 24 hours. There were some turbulent times. There was a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger with some people, a lot of hopes with a lot of other people. Just want to talk about that a little bit, reflect on the day's activities so far, and just kind of talk about some of the great things that have happened today. With that, once again, I'm Victor Castro. This is Mainline Tonight. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you at 8:00.